Okay, so we're going to move on where we left off from step 3. So now we're going to go on from step 4. And first we're going to watch this video so we know what to do in Unity.
We've added a vehicle to our scene. Now the next thing that we need to add is an obstacle. So we're going to choose one and place it in front of the
I can
player.
hear.
Make sure to watch me before you do this yourself. Now, down in our project window where we got our vehicles, we're going to make sure that we go to the sidebar, select our course library so that we can see all of the other folders inside of our course library. And then we're going to go to the obstacles folder and double click. And you can see here we have all of these different options that we can select from. I'm going to choose this crate because our truck actually has some boxes on it, so it looks kind of similar. So this time I'm going to left click and drag our crate, but instead of going into the hierarchy, I'm going to drag it directly into our scene view, and you can see that it's actually updating live wherever my mouse is positioned. And in fact, if I drag it closer to the road, it actually snaps directly onto the road. I can even do it with the car. Look, there's a box on the car. So
Oh,
I'm going to release my mouse button now, and you can see our box has been positioned in our scene. Now, in Unity, we actually have coordinates to keep track of where our objects are in the world. So, for example, our truck is actually in the center, the exact center of this virtual world we've created. At 0, 0, 0, you can see that by going and clicking on the truck, make sure it's selected. On the right side of Unity, you can see the inspector window pop up, and it expands. Underneath the inspector, at the very top of all of the different options, there's our transform. These are called components. So our transform component specifically carries the data around our position, our rotation, and our scale. The rotation and scale we'll get to in a little bit. With our position, you can see that it's set to 0, 0, 0. If I compare that to our crate, by selecting our crate, you can see that the crate information is now in our inspector. Our crate is positioned at 4.8, negative 0.0 on the Y, and then 4.26 on the Z. Handily, you can actually tell all of these different letters from these arrows over here on our box. So, currently we have our Move tool selected. You can actually see which tools we currently have selected in the top left. We'll go through some of the other ones in a bit. With our Move tool, you can see the up arrow. So in fact, if I left click and drag on this green arrow, you can see over on the right side in our inspector, the Y position changes. If I want to undo what I just did, I can use Control or Command Z. You can do the same thing with the X, which in this case is this red arrow. And I'll undo that with Control or Command Z. And with the blue arrow, this is RZ. So I'll undo that. So I'm going to reposition this crate, and I can do this one of two ways. I can either do it by going to the inspector on the right underneath our transform. If I actually select the box, you can see that all of the text is now highlighted. I can actually type in 0, and if I type in 0, you can see that now our box is moved all the way in front of our vehicle. Now, if I were to set all of these to 0, that would take a really long time, and I don't want to do that. So in our transform, you can actually see all the way on the right side of our component, there's this little gear icon. If you're using a new version of Unity, it will actually be 3 little dots instead of a gear. So if I left click on the gear icon, you can see that there are different options, and one of the options is reset position. So if I left click that, now our positions are set to 0, 0, 0. And so now what I can do is if I want to move our box now that everything's at 0, now I'm going to do this the easy way where I can just type in the values in our inspector. So I want this to be a good distance away, and it would be a lot of work to just drag it with our move tool. So instead, I'm just going to go into the inspector on the right side. In our transform position, I'm going to select the Z text. if I click on it, you can see that now it highlights that text, and I can just type in 25. And it automatically moves my box 25 units away on the Z. And a handy thing to know in Unity is that each individual unit, so if I had a Z of 1, that would actually just be 1 meter. So we actually moved this box 25 meters on the Z position, which moved it in front of our vehicle. Last but not least, I'm going to do some cleanup on my different objects. So my crate, I'm going to rename. So my crate, what I'm going to do is in the hierarchy on the left side, if I right click on the crate, I can rename. There's a rename option. I left click that. Now I can type in anything I want. So I'll call this an obstacle for now. And then with our truck or vehicle, if you select the vehicle in the hierarchy, you can actually rename this through the inspector on the right side. If you see at the top, you have the same name that's in the hierarchy on the left. So if I actually click on that text, it highlights all of it. If I type in vehicle and I press enter, now you see in our hierarchy, our truck has been renamed vehicle. So different ways that you can rename your objects. So what you're going to do is in your project window, select the course library, double click on the obstacles folder, left click and drag one of your obstacles into the scene. And then when your obstacle is in the scene, if you select it in your hierarchy by clicking on it, on the right side, you can see all of the information in the inspector about the obstacle's components. Rename your obstacle to obstacle, and then you're going to go to the transform component. Underneath that section, you're going to go all the way to the right. There's this little gear icon. Left click, reset position. So it's back at 0, 0, 0, right where our vehicle is. And then once you've done that, you can go and select the position Z, click on it, and then you can type in whatever number that you want, and it'll move that obstacle in the Z direction. And then what you're going to do is you're then going to select your vehicle, and you're going to rename the vehicle that you have selected to just be called vehicle. Now it's your turn.
Okay, and now I'm first going to just go to my project and just wait for that to open. And remember, if you didn't see the video, you can just look at what's here. It will show you. Like, if you forget the coordinates, you can just look here. And I'm just going to wait for that to come up. I just need to do something first here. Okay. So now I'm going to go to Unity, and I'm first just going to focus in on the vehicle so I can actually see what I'm doing here. And now, like I said, I'm going to go to the course library and go to obstacles and take my obstacle. Well, there's all these, but I'm just going to take the crate. And I'm going to drag it in here. So as you can see, it just goes like that, and it sticks on the road if it gets close enough, as you can see. So I can just put it there, move it like that across with the Z-axis, just all the way there, then back. Just as you can see, it goes off the screen, and then like a Formula One driver, it just goes off again. Now I've actually lost it, but that's why it also shows the transform in the inspector right here. It's the gear icon, which is 3 dots in later versions of Unity, as he said, and I can just do reset. Now, if you've forgotten, you can just go back here. So yeah, I've done the first 2 steps, and then I can change to XYZ location. And then after that, in the hierarchy, which is the box on the left, I'll just rename the objects, which is the hierarchy, which is here, which is hierarchy. And if you're dragging something into the hierarchy, you drag it like this. But then it automatically goes to 0, 0. So I've now selected the crate again. And I'm now going to put this at 25. Like, I could put it to further away if I want to do like 100. It's even off the screen. But 25 is a good distance away from the car. And now we're going to do the cleanup as he suggested. And we're going to rename this to obstacle. And we're going to rename this one, the truck, which is too long, to just vehicle. And then after that, we're going to save all this. And we're going to move on to the next video to see what we're doing next. So I'm going to mark this step as complete. Well, I don't have to, but it's a good thing to just mark it complete so you actually know what you're doing from that. And now we're going to go on here.
Now we've added our player, our vehicle, and our obstacle to our scene, but now we really want to get a lens of our player and understand their perspective. So we can actually do that using our camera. If you go to the hierarchy on the left side of Unity, select your main camera by clicking on it, you can see that now we have the camera selected. This very large rectangle pops up, and on the bottom right, we can actually see our camera preview. In fact, if I deselect the camera, the preview goes away, and if I select the camera again, the preview comes back. So the preview is actually what we can see of what the player will see in our game. And in fact, that preview is entirely mapped to this huge rectangle that we can see in our scene. And so this is very helpful to see and understand what the player sees. Our camera actually controls what we see in our game view. So, in fact, if I go to the top of Unity and I press the play button, you can see that our scene view changes to this view here, which is our game view. In fact, in the center, the 2 tabs are side by side right next to each other. So, in our game view, you can see that if I try and click on our vehicle here, nothing will happen. I can still select the vehicle in the hierarchy, however, nothing changes here. Versus if I go to my scene, you can see that our vehicle's back there. If I select the move tool, I can move our vehicle again. And then in the game view, you can see that our vehicle actually moved a little bit. So maybe if I go in the transform component, if I press like 5, okay, cool. So the vehicle is moving. That's interesting. Now, the one thing about play mode is, so this is how we test how our different objects interact in our world, how our player can, for example, control our vehicle. Since I made changes to our vehicle in our scene view, in fact, if I press the play button again, so I stop the play mode, our vehicle actually moves back. Let's see if I can test that again. We'll go straight into the scene view this time by clicking on it, and I'll just move the vehicle back somewhere to like maybe like 10ish or so. And then I press play again. our vehicle snaps backwards. So play mode doesn't actually save if we change anything about any of our objects, but our play mode and our game view is really helpful. So when we're testing out how our player actually plays and experiences the game, we can see that in the game view versus in our scene view, where we go to set up our objects, position our vehicles, move our obstacles in our scene, and interact with them that way to create a layout for our environment. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into your hierarchy, select your camera. You can see the camera. And then if you want to go into your play mode, you can press the play button and it'll go into your game view. In fact, you can use Control or Command P to actually exit play mode. And if you press that again, Control or Command and the P key, it'll go back in. And so you can see what your player will see when they're actually in the game. Now it's your turn.
Okay, so remember, if you phone, you can just do this. So we're just going to see how the game looks to our player right now. For us, we can only see it like this, just in the scene view. But this wouldn't be how the game would look like when the player would be playing it. Like, I can go inside the car. They wouldn't be able to do that. They would be somewhere else. They would just have the camera. And as you can see, the camera icon is right here. So that's actually the camera. You can select it from here, but it's easier to select it from the hierarchy. So as you can see, that's a camera. I'm going to, instead of going straight to the game view, just like pressing it, I'm going to do Control P as a shortcut that it showed. And then it gives us the game view. And as you can see in the scene view, oh, and by the way, this like background of it, that doesn't usually happen. I just had set like that, which we'll learn soon. So as you can see, the camera's here and it shows how where it is and like how wide it goes. So as like that. So if I just move it forward, the camera preview is just down there. It would go like that. So I'm going to reset that like I did just now. And as you can see, there's also all these parts. This should make it so like how zoomed in or zoomed out the camera is, like that. Like it's so wide the camera preview is just freaking out. And if I just move this forward a bit while it's in game view, like I just take it away, like out of the map, and then I stop it, it'll come back as it showed.